technical information before we get really started with the program. My name is Christina Pottring. I'm the Senior Advisor on Freedom of Religion or Belief at the Swedish Mission Council, one of 2 advisors. And I'm very happy to see all of you here. And I hope that you are happy to be here and see each other here. And now for the information that is obligatory in all kinds of settings like these. Emergency exits to your right, my left, or the back door. Bathrooms up the stairs, and I think they are to the left. And we are all grown-ups, so please feel free to just sneak out whenever you need a bathroom break, or it's very warm in here, because we're in a studio. And this will be recorded and broadcasted live, and also saved and used for later views and watchings. But, you know, if you suddenly feel you're very warm and so on, feel free to sneak out. This is a co-arrangement together with the study associations Bilda and Census. And we are very happy for that. And I have also been asked to make advertisements for the next thing happening after this and just share information. And that's the big celebration at 1 o'clock here in Philadelphia Kyrkan. With that having been said, it's now 9:31 and we start for real. And the first person I would like to welcome to this stage is the General Secretary of the Swedish Mission Council, SMC Faith and Development, Charlotta Norrby.
Great, it's great to be welcomed in that way. So good morning, everybody. So my name is Charlotta Norrby. I'm the Secretary General of SMC Faith and Development, the Swedish Mission Council. It's a privilege for us to host this seminar here today. And just a few words about the Swedish Mission Council, SMC. It's actually the oldest ecumenical organization in Sweden. And it's gathering a wide spectrum of member organizations, churches, missionary organizations, and also faith-based development organizations. And we have partners in literally all corners of the world. We are specializing in FORB, freedom of religion or belief, religious literacy, and sustainable development. We are right now in the process of adapting to the new situation with dramatically changed government policies towards civil society organizations within development cooperation and aid. So we really feel the complexity of the changing landscape and the issues discussed in the report Ecumenical Diakonia called for to transformation on our bare skin at this very moment. We are very happy to be part of this ecumenical celebration, and we welcome those of you who are here on site today, those of you who are watching online, and also those of you who will be watching this later on. And also a special welcome to our international guests, Kenneth Matata from the World Council of Churches, and Rudelmal Bueno de Faria from the ACT Alliance. And also welcome to our 4 students from the University College of Stockholm, who will also be participating on stage today. Sitting over there right now. Of the many events this week, this is one that has very strong roots in the beginning 100 years ago. Now, as then, the focus is on the calling of the church to life and work in a troubled world where polarization and wars are a threat. The document called to transformation, Ecumenical Diakonia, this one, was launched at the General Assembly of the World Council of Churches in Karlsruhe in 2022. And it's a joint effort by the World Council of Churches and the ACT Alliance. And this seminar can be seen as an ongoing conversation between these organizations. We believe that the document challenges the churches to find their diaconal identity and the faith-based development organizations to find their theological roots and their faith-based identity. And we want to bring the best of these both types of organizations so that we together can meet the challenges today and the calling that we have in our time. And if this conversation can facilitate this just a little bit, then I think we are more than happy with the outcome. So we ask for God's blessing on our conversation today, and thank you so much and welcome again.
And without much further ado, I want to welcome my colleague, Petter, to the stage to present and launch a very new document from the SMC.
Thank you. And thank you, Charlotta, for your opening words. And you said that today our conversation is a part of an ongoing conversation between churches and FBOs or organizations or agencies, whatever we want to call that group of organizations represented by ACT Alliance. And the process started over 10 years ago when churches and local organizations felt that they needed a new beginning on how to communicate together, because it was troublesome. It wasn't easy because there are two different kinds of animals and trying to communicate together. And the most interesting is that the same challenges, the same discussions that are faced on the global level is experienced also on the local level. Some of you represent local churches, local congregations. And exactly the same conversation as you are holding on the global level is held between the local diaconal organization and the local church. And equally important today, as a few years ago, even if the world is different. And things that when this report was launched a few years ago, and it was written maybe 10 years ago, some things that were seen as trends or appearing towards the horizon, or maybe threats, they're now fully developed facts and circumstances and realities we have to live with. The issues discussed in the report are more urgent today and more acute. And this means that the conversation between the two types of organizations need to continue as the landscape is changing. And as Charlotta said, the relation between government, mostly in the north, in the global north, and agencies or FBOs has changed dramatically. And the contract between governments and organizations is renegotiated in many countries, and funding has dwindled. And this has changed and is changing the dynamics and the power dynamics between governments, churches, and international aid organizations. And I see two trends that were maybe there when the document was written, but they are now very obvious and have a strong bearing on this conversation. And it's one, I see that more and more of the faith-based organizations are trying to reformulate their self-understanding and returning to their own faith roots or theological roots. And FBOs are reconquering, because it's a struggle, their faith-based language, and they're becoming bilingual, speaking both the language of faith and the language of human rights. And I also see that local churches and denominations are growing in their importance for development. And they're growing in confidence based on their deep-rooted setting in the local communities, their sustainability, their endurance, and their long-term perspective that no other type of organizations have. And we believe that churches constantly need to see diakonia, not as an activity, but as their identity. And we believe that agencies and FBOs need to see theological roots and faith-based identity, not as a thing hidden in a policy document or a frosting on the cake, so to say, but as a part of who they as organizations are, and as an asset when it comes to transforming the world. And what used to be seen as soft values, like faith, tradition, ethics, values, narratives, etc., are now hardcore values for transforming the world. I'm almost done. I'm just going to say that we're really, really happy to see that the words religious literacy is so frequent in the report as the concept of bilingualism, because those are the superpowers of the Swedish Mission Council. I see that the time is ticking. And also today, we like to, for the Swedish audience, not all of you speak Swedish, but most of you, I think, speak Swedish. And today, SMC is launching this study guide to the document. See it as a handrail of entering into the very rich text that the document is. So it's partly a translation to Swedish, but it's also a study guide with questions or comments on every chapter. So it's available on SMC's website, and we also have a few printed copies down at the resource table. I really want to thank also for the possibility of this, the Mission Society of the Diocese of Lund, who supported us very generously in that process. And I also like to mention the ACT Alliance Community of Practice on Religion and Development, who's been a very good partner in the planning of this seminar. And of course the Stockholm College University, because without you, this wouldn't have happened in a way. So thank you very much, and we're looking forward to a very good conversation.
Thank you, Petter. And now it is my privilege to present our first speaker. Dr. Kenneth Mantata is the Director of Public Witness in Diakonia at the World Council of Churches. Originally from Zimbabwe, Dr. Mantata can be described as an ecumenical theologian working from an interdisciplinary, interconfessional, intercultural, and interfaith perspective. With more than 20 years in pastoral academic research and faith-based organizational leadership settings. Dr. Mantata holds experience from working towards local, regional, and global levels in Africa, Europe, Asia, Latin, and North America. The World Council of Churches, WCC for short, is an ecumenical organization gathering approximately 350 churches and Christian denominations from various Protestant and Orthodox backgrounds. Dr. Mantata, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this reflection. I heard that this is a Pentecostal place, and I can feel the spirit moving here. As a Luther Costal. I was asked to do an impossible topic on looking at the threads of Ecumenical Diakonia from 1925 to the present moment and to show what new trends are emerging. So you can wish me the best in 20 minutes. But moments of commemorating anniversaries are always possibilities for renewal. There are fertile spaces for memory. We can look back with gratitude and at times with a critical eye on those who have gone before us. This year is a special year because there are three key anniversaries that we commemorate. First, it's 1700 years of Nicaea. The foundational council which reflected on the full divinity and humanity of Christ and the mystery of incarnation. This established what we could say is the foundation of Christian service or diaconia. If God in Christ has truly entered a place of human suffering, then our service to a suffering world is not just something that is peripheral, but something that is central to our being as the church. But this year we are also commemorating 40 years since the Kairos document in South Africa. The Kairos document is a very insightful, prophetic statement of the churches in the context of racial justice and apartheid. It questioned the theology that informed the action or the inaction of the church in the context of apartheid. It saw that there were three theologies that informed this action or inaction. One was state theology, which just endorsed the status quo. The other was church theology, which justified a neutral stance of the church in the face of injustice. But the Kairos document called for prophetic theology, which was a transformative and critical view of the church's engagement, informed by scriptures and by critical social analysis. It is this understanding of the prophetic that informs our understanding of prophetic diaconia. But the third anniversary we are commemorating, of course, is the 100 years since the inaugural conference of life and work in 1925. In the shadow of the devastating World War, First World War, there was also, this is in the context of shifts in industrialization, churches gathered to formulate a unified understanding of being in the world. They wanted to find a collective social ethic informed by diverse theological traditions, but also commitment and shaped by scriptures. If ecumenical diaconia is understood as transformative service, churches carry out together in witnessing to the kingdom of God, one can safely say Stockholm Conference stands as a seminal moment in its modern articulation. So what I try to do in this address is just to reiterate some of the key issues that emerged that are related to diaconia from Stockholm, and then also trace some trajectories that they informed in subsequent ecumenical diaconia. And then I conclude by highlighting some of the challenges and trends that we see today. The context of 1925 conference was that of profound devastation, as we heard. So diaconia was already a subtext of this conference, and this is no surprise that we see key figures among the many people involved. Adolf Keller, from a Reformed theologian from Switzerland, played a very important role because he was already actively involved in humanitarian and diaconal work. And he described the situation as tremendously, that of tremendous problems of relief and reconstruction. One person, of course, that we will always talk about in reference to 1925 is Nathan Soderblom. Many discussions about him do not highlight his diaconal sensitivity. But we know that he was frustrated by how aid was being distributed, and he was disappointed that many denominations, each one was carrying out this work on their own. So we can see that at the beginning of this conference in the thinking that there was a balance between those who were oriented to practice and people like Soderblom who were ecumenical but also committed to deep theological reflection. Now, it is also important for us to realize that Nathan Soderblom was a very special influence in this process. And I find something inspiring at the first meeting of Nathan Soderblom and Adolf Keller. Adolf Keller says that when I met Nathan Soderblom, I found him sitting together with a group of people from Sweden, and they were reading the Bible. They were reading the scriptures, not the program of the conference. They were reading the Bible in preparation for the conference. We can see already from this that there was definitely a committed, a Bible-based tradition. And you will see when we read from the Kairos document that the commitment of scriptures, the prophetic tradition from scriptures, is key in ecumenical diaconia. The conference, of course, the main aim of this conference was to find a common practical work that the churches could do together in response to the crisis. The slogan that had been developed in the preparatory conference in Helsingborg, "Doctrine divides but action unites," was still captured what was going to inform the conversations. But slowly, during the conference, it became clear that you could not only talk about practical implementation of diaconia without thinking of the underlying theological assumptions. Deep theological questions could not be sidestepped. So we can see that heated debates emerged, for example, about the realization of God's kingdom on earth. The question was, are we expected that the actions, the agents of humanity can realize the kingdom of God? Theologians from Germany were very skeptical about this. Others were asking the question, when we are talking about the realization of the kingdom of God, is it something that can be realized in our time, or is it something that can be realized at the end of time? This question, in its different permutations, has continued to inform ecumenical diaconia. Because there are some who believe that our commitment is to prepare people to go to heaven, where all problems of life will have been resolved. So the thought leadership of Nathan Soderblom and people like Adolf Keller really informed ecumenical diaconia as we were going to have it. We know that the conference also was quite holistic in its approach. If you look at the themes that it addressed, the 6 themes that it addressed, we can see also that there was a clear understanding that in order for ecumenical diaconia to be effective, it requires the ability to read the signs of the times. So what we will find in the call to transformation, the call for reading the signs of the times, is already found in 1925 conference. Now, the ecumenical diaconia, of course, evolved after 1925. The life and work moved on in 1937, the Oxford Conference, in the context of fascism in the world. And this conference already prepared the formation of the World Council of Churches through bringing together life and work and faith and order. But at the formation of the WCC, just some years before the formation of the WCC, in the context of the Second World War, we can already see that the diaconal foundation laid down in the 1920s helped the churches to respond to the crisis, the humanitarian crisis of the Second World War. The formation of the commission to attend to refugees, already informed the work of the WCC at the beginning. Now, the latter half of the 20th century, we can see that there was a critical change in the understanding of ecumenical diaconia in the 1960s and the 1980s. The many countries in the global south started to become involved in the ecumenical movement. And they were starting to question, if we are gaining political independence, what does it mean in regaining our independence to contribute to our own development? So there were heated developments in ecumenical diaconia. You will remember the voices of people like John Gatu from Kenya and Goodna Tumsa from Ethiopia, who were challenging the relationship between the global south and the global north, and challenging the paternalism that attended to ecumenical diaconia. The assembly in Vancouver in 1983 also reshaped how we were going to understand diaconia as attending to the overall brokenness of humanity, and not only as service that is being offered from the global north to the south. It was, of course, in this period from the 1980s that we also started to see a growing desire to consolidate the work of ecumenical diaconia, especially at global level, leading to the discussions on the formation of ACT International, ACT Development, until 2010, the establishment of the ACT Alliance. Now, I know that this history is far much longer than I can say here, but I want to show that we find ourselves today in a completely new context. And there are some issues that I want to lift up that are going to challenge the way we have been doing diaconia for the last 100 years. First, the decolonial turn. We are at a point again when there are significant questions on the relationship between the ecumenical partners in diaconia, the questions that were raised in the 70s and the 80s. This demands transition from paternalism to authentic partnership where global north and south relate as mutual learners in shared mission. This involves reclaiming local theologies, indigenous practices and services, shifting decision-making power and leadership to local level, and engaging in honest truth-telling and reconciliation about the church's historical complicity in colonial structures. This is a big issue in ecumenical diaconia today, because we can see that the colonial foundation of ecumenical diaconia has not been dismantled. And this continues to challenge how churches work together. Secondly, you can see that there is a call, and this is represented in the call to transformation, to also think about diaconia more as transformation in a holistic sense than simply addressing specific individual thematic areas. This changes the way we have been doing ecumenical diaconia, where sometimes we see organizations specializing in this area or that area. There is a call on how ecumenical diaconia can be viewed as a transformative initiative to transform power relations, to transform how local agency is lifted up, to transform how we engage with institutions, to transform how business shapes our engagement, to transform how our governments are addressing questions of human development. But we are also operating at a time when models of funding have drastically changed. The financial engine of diaconia is currently under strain. Traditional funding from the mainline northern countries is declining due to shrinking membership and politicization of aid. This has accelerated a pre-existing trend towards projectification of diaconia, where structured and around time-bound measured measurable results are expected, sometimes sidelining relational, long-term, and spiritually grounded work. Diaconal agencies are diversifying funding sources, seeking grants from governments, but these are tied to national policy interest. So there are also explorations to enter into partnership with foundations, with corporations. This creates a new question on accountabilities and risks that dilute possibilities for the prophetic voice. The push for local sustainability and fundraising, while positive, also demands new competencies and risks that overwhelm local churches. One big challenge, the third challenge that I see also for our time, is the secularization of the public sphere. In the global north particularly, we see that churches have lost the monopoly of being the containers of the common good. They are now operating in competitive market environment alongside other secular NGOs and state agents. To secular funding, the question of this challenges the question of legitimacy. Diaconal actors must adopt a secular lingua franca, as we have just heard, the language of human rights, sustainable development, and human dignity, while at the same time they give legitimation or a rationale of their Christian motivation of this work. This necessitates the understanding of diverse audiences, but while at the same time remaining connected to the unique value of faith-based approach rooted in love of the neighbor and the hope that is provided by the gospel. The fourth change that we see, of course, is that of digital and technological revolution, which also reshapes the way, not only the how, but also the who in diaconia. It enables us to innovate our service delivery. It allows us to do digital counseling, use apps to connect volunteers. It revolutionized the way we do resource mobilization and communication. But it also exacerbates the digital divide that marginalizes the poor, especially the elderly, and those in disconnected communities. It raises profound ethical questions related to data privacy, surveillance, and potential dehumanization of aid in relationships that once were deeply personal. But for us, also from the World Council of Churches, one of the issues that is lifted up in this context, new environment of ecumenical diaconia, is the climate and environmental crisis. This existential threat has become central, non-negotiable diaconal frontier. The understanding of the neighbor has expanded to include creation itself and the future generations. Diaconia must now integrate disaster response with climate adaptation, mitigation, and address the root causes of this green transition. The diaconal organizations are also called to examine and reform their own operating footprints, aligning practice with the principles. Now, as I conclude, I see it's 3 minutes. As I conclude, I want to lift up three issues that I think must be taken into consideration, not only with the WCC, but ACT Alliance and all other ecumenical partners. First, this anniversary calls us to reclaim the soul of ecumenical diaconia. In a crowded, professionalized humanitarian sector, ecumenical diaconia must be more than efficient service delivery. It is a unique value which must be built on theological base and its motivation in the incarnational love of God and operating within the understanding of koinonia or fellowship of the global church. This requires intentional investment in faith and religious literacy for all practitioners, ensuring our work is nourished by a deep well of theological reflection and prayer. Secondly, it demands a revisiting of the current structures of diaconia. Many of our structures of ecumenical. So I conclude. when I was preparing for this meeting, I asked the different groups that are involved in the Bible study groups that I run online, what diaconal engagements that they can share, what they are doing at a local level. I was moved to realize that many of our people are realizing diaconia is part and parcel of their identities. I received almost 15 voluntary information of people who are running small-scale diaconal initiatives that are not funded by any big organization, that are not run by the development agencies of the church. And I realized that we are going back to the original idea of diaconia, because diaconia must emerge as the self-understanding of the church at a local level, with efforts to make sure that these diaconal efforts at local level are combined at different structures of society for scaling up and for impact. And I believe that this is the future of prophetic diaconia. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Dr. Mtata. And once again, apologies for the sound problems. Sometimes other realities than the ones we focus on at the moment make themselves known. Our next guest, Mr. Rudelmar Buena de Feira, is the General Secretary of the ACT Alliance. He has over 25 years of experience working with national and international non-governmental organizations. His education embraces business administration, international relations, and foreign trade. He has post-graduation studies in diaconia and community development and several specialization courses related to international humanitarian and human rights law. The ACT Alliance is an international coalition of 159 churches and faith-based organizations and works together in humanitarian development and advocacy work in over 140 countries. The ACT Alliance members have their primary background within the WCC and the Lutheran World Federation. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a correction, not correction, but I have more than 30 years of experiences with faith-based organizations, not only civil society organizations. We're part of civil society. You know, I would like to start where Kenneth finished in terms of the strong colonial legacy that we have within the Ecumenical Diakonia and the diaconal institutions, and also, especially in the humanitarian sector. The example how the humanitarian system was established is a very good example how the legacy of colonization is there, no? And we have a group globally that are trying to we have not a humanitarian system, but humanitarian ecosystems, where the faith communities played an important role within these ecosystems, and they are the first responders. And I'm saying that on the humanitarian work because that's part of the diaconal mission and work of the organizations. I'm here a little bit to talk about the relations between civil society and governments in this new context that needs to be renegotiated. And what is the impact then of this on the Ecumenical Diakonia and our diaconal work? And that is very much what I will present here is part of the document Call to Transformation, Ecumenical Diakonia, that was produced together. Of course, that was issued, as Kenneth rightly mentioned, in a different context, but the basis and the foundations are very valid and relevant today. Of course, the context is different. We are not living in the same world 10 years ago. It's become much more complex, and that implies also for diaconia to be adaptive to this. And I think that some of the chapters of the Ecumenical Diakonia document are important in this context, especially the ones that brings these issues of the prophetic diaconia. the political diaconia, as you want to say. Not minimizing the importance of the institutional diaconia that are run by the hospitals, by the clinics that the churches have. But I think that we need to respond to the times that we are living today in a different context. And before going more to talk about the points that I would like to bring, it's important that we setting the context that we are living today. Of course, today we are speaking here about what is going on. Maybe next week it will be completely different. And you are used now to every morning on a Monday to have a different context that have a big impact. It was mentioned here, the aid cuts. That was new, 40% of the money that was going for humanitarian work and development work from one day to the other stopped. And nobody is talking about the impact of these cuts. Only the US aid cuts has, according to studies that were made, are projecting that 13 million people will die because of this lack of support. Yeah, and if you will consider what the European governments are doing, or because they are reducing international cooperations or moving part of this money to security and armament, that could be 18 million people. I do not recall exactly what's the population in Sweden, but then you can imagine how many people are dying because of this support. And how that affects diaconal organizations. That has a big impact, not only to the governments that are receiving funds, to hospital and security systems in their countries, but also the churches. Because this kind of implications has a domino effect. It's not only governments, but many of our institutions are following these procedures. And that is part of what I call the confluence of fundamentalisms, the economic, the political, and the religious. That sometimes you are moving, you are being instrumentalized. Never the politicization of religion or the religionization of politics have been so exacerbated as we have today. You know, I'm from Brazil. You probably are following what's the news that happens there, and you know the influence of some of the churches that start from one eye to the other day, engaging very much with political and economic forces to sanctify the wrongdoings, to attack democracy, to attack values that we as Christians and associated with our diaconal commitment are essential. So we are witnessing a global reconfiguration of power. We know that the geopolitics is on our TVs every day and newspapers. We have an increasing authoritarianism. We have nationalism, shrinking space for civil society, including humanitarian organizations, diaconal organizations, churches, and other religious institutions, and the instrumentalizations of the religions that I mentioned. And these shifts directly impact our society, including faith-based organizations, the churches, in the different ways they are implementing diaconia. And at the same time, we see growing inequalities everywhere that are caused by different things. One is the aid cuts. The other one is the policies and the instruments that we are excluding people instead of include. And especially some vulnerable groups that we know. Of course, the Swedish society, the Nordic, the European, they are much more advanced in some of the issues. And they believe that is the best way to go. But in many, many countries, especially in Latin America, for instance, groups like indigenous communities, LGBTQI+ communities, they are targeted. And they are targeted sometimes even with the blessings of the churches because of the values that they are reinventing. I think that there is a discussion about theology in some context, the practical theology. And alongside this rising authoritarianism, and shrinking space for civil society and faith-based organizations, you are witnesses a profound erosion of the values, of the ethical and democratic values, and often replaced by narrative that normalize exclusion. It's very easy to say, you know, migrant refugees needs to be out because we need to protect our culture, our language, our procedures. And it's like we are thinking that we are living in a planet that was like it was 100 years ago. It's not anymore. We were extremely globalizing everything with new challenges that we are not even considering now, like the impact of artificial intelligence and how our societies will be, and the impact for the values that we as Christians profess. So that is some elements that we need to do and to take very much into account when we were redefining our relationship with these big powers. The multilateral system that is passing also by a reform, as you know, the UN system is attacked, but also needs to reform because it has not been so effective as before. The role of the local actors, especially faith communities and community-led response, are important elements that we need to take into account, and that needs to be changed as well in this relationship we have as faith-based organizations, churches, with governments. Because the policies, and I'm a part of a panel that is organized by a European Institute, ODI, International Overseas Institute. 10 people, we are discussing with the governments, including SIDA here in Sweden, in terms of the future of humanitarian actions, but based on values and focusing on the localization, the role of national members or national actors, and also local leadership. So then what Diakonia has in relation to all this? I think that is very much related to the importance for us to associate our faith-based diaconia with the rights-based diaconia. And that yesterday, I think that Dr. Professor Azakaran mentioned yesterday in the church in terms of the importance of the human rights as the common values for the religions, because that is what brings us together. And I think that's the point of ecumenical diaconia, the prophetic diaconia, or the political diaconia, as you want to say. And it's important to say that diaconia is not a charity only. You know, when I was working in Brazil, I was a little bit against this, you know, the compassionate role of the church. Because I said, no, that brings to, you know, all Latin Americans, they are a little bit revolutionary. They want to say, no, you need to be political, you need to change the structures, and if you are so compassionate, you are maybe assistantialistic or paternalistic in your work. I changed dramatically, especially when you saw on TV today what is going on everywhere. No compassion at all. We are losing this. You are losing as human beings. Doesn't matter how many children are dying in conflict. Doesn't matter how many lives are lost using political arguments. And that is unacceptable for the churches, I believe. But at the same time, we see some silence. Not only in the churches, but all the religions, and also the ecumenical movement sometimes, because of this political pressure, the polarization that exists, that goes beyond the global sphere, but go into our families as well. How many of you doesn't have in your families dispute now political that we didn't have before? In your group of friends, and also in your societies, in your own countries, is very polarized. And when the people need the support, spiritual support and guidance the most, sometimes in some parts the churches and the organizational or ecumenical organizations are not giving this response to the people. So for me, it's important that, and for the ACT Alliance, that we associate our right-based with our faith-based work. Kenneth mentioned in terms of the historical, in terms of the disassociation of some of the specialized ministries or the agencies in terms of the role of religion. The UN even recognized, and the governments recognize that the faith and religion play an important role in the equation. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the worst. And we have a responsibility as people of faith, based on our values, Christian values, to put the things that are promoting inclusion, respect, solidarity, and justice. That's very important to say as well. I'm just monitoring my time here to not get any cards. But basically, the role of the faith-based organization in today's civil society, I think that we need to emphasize our rootedness. We are local, established in all the work to do. We have global platforms, multilateral systems that, of course, they have a big impact because they are defining the global policies that are applied globally and nationally. But it's at national level, at community level, that the transformation starts. Starts through the prophetic diaconia, which includes advocacy, which includes speaking out, standing up, and supporting our neighbors, independently if they are from a different tribal, or if they are different countries, if they are different sexual orientation. And that is the beauty of diaconia. You know, in the ecumenical movement, in the churches, it's very easy to have dispute about the theological interpretations on topics. But in the diaconal work, no, because the dignity of the people is there. We are not asking if the people are LGBTQI, if they are indigenous, if they are black, if they are white, if they are Asian. No. You are there to provide the support to all the creation of God, as it's very known within the ecumenical movement. And also we need to see how we will use better the structures that we have in the ecumenical movement within the churches to do diaconia. Yesterday also was mentioned, I think that by the bishop or someone else, in terms of when the churches and the interreligious councils were receiving refugees in the churches and the mosques. And, you know, that is an example how we need to do that, how we will use our congregations, the volunteers that was mentioned here, because we have a social power that nobody else has, not even governments, and you know that. The churches, the faith communities have this power, the institutions, the religious leaders have this power to convoke and to ask people to engage in this. So navigating and the shifting relationship with the governments. As I mentioned before, we are involved in different processes as ACT Alliance. We have intentionally engaging global decision-making platforms, including the World Economic Forum, where we have a special position to bring the moral imperative from our understanding, from a diaconal perspective, not theological, because we are not the WCC or the Lutheran World Federation that have this role, but based on a practical elements, how we need to do things. In our advocacy work in these spaces, we are not using reports and technical data to show how inequalities are killing people. You are bringing the people from the communities that are affected by that. And in my whole experience is more than 30 years working with the UN, interacting with the UN, only changes were happen when the people feel that, listening from people that are raped as a weapon of war in DRC, as we see that in New York. So that is the important for us, to be much more humanized when we will do this diaconal work. It's not about only the very advocacy-oriented people with these techniques and tactics, but we need to bring that in our partners. And that is also in the negotiations we have with the government. We need to make them accountable for the decisions they are doing. And that is important, because that is about humanity. And that will define the way how we will address, if that's in a prophetical way or not, is the way how humanity will be in the future. I never lose hope. And I hope that in my generation, I will be able to see changes. And I believe that's possible. And I think that the religious institutions and organizations and leadership and actors have an important role to play in this. But I hope that my daughters and my grandsons will be able to have something better that we have today. And I don't want that they will be created in a culture that is losing these values that we have as ecumenical organizations and diaconal organizations. So what will be then the Ecumenical Diakonia response to the polarization and fundamentalisms? In ACT Alliance, we have some processes going on, some regions engaging, especially with the National Council of Churches, to address issues, not to leave that out of the table for discussions. Because nowadays it's very easy, okay, let's only congregate and work on the topics that bring us together. That doesn't work, because then we will stimulate polarizations. We need to bring the poles to the center. We need to find a way of negotiating and understanding each other. So I am finishing my time, and I have more things, but I will reduce my... So I think that we need to embody a very radical transformation to respond to the times of today as organizations. And one of the issues to do that is to promote localization. Localization of the discussions, incorporation of the different understandings of the communities, and that will be a way of bringing insights to the global ecumenical movement and to the global ecumenical diaconia as well. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk about this topic.
Thank you. And now we will welcome the students from Stockholm University College, a summer course, ecumenical summer course, to the stage or the couch. And while they come up, take the chance to move as you like, but do not leave the room. Just stretch in whatever way works best for you. I am sorry to make some of you disappointed. There will be no time for questions from the audience. Instead, we have asked these students to question our experts and visitors. These students, they've had the opportunity and privilege to study the report, which I now totally forgot the name of. That's very embarrassing.
Called to transformation.
Yes, Called to Transformation. Thank you. During the summer, as well as other historical documents around Ecumenical Diakonia and so on. It's Ann Heikkinen, it's Elise Lindqvist, and Lise Zeik, and then Jantje Bartel. And they've been given the task to formulate one question to either Dr. Mtata or Mr. Bueno de Feira, and then very brief answers to those questions. And then Dr. Mtata and Mr. Bueno de Feira will wrap up with final comments before we finish. And we will try to do this in 30 minutes. So it will be fine, don't worry. We will start out with handing out microphones, which will help. And we also have a person with a hearing aid, so I'm going to move this and put it here so that everyone can follow. And then the first question goes to Anne Heikkinen.
Thank you. My name is Anne Heikkinen. I come from the University of Helsinki, where I'm a doctoral student in ecumenics. And I had also privilege to be a part of Ecumenical Summer Academy. I want to thank the organizers for allowing me and my fellow students to contribute and ask some questions. my question is for Reverend Dr. Kenneth. As we have learned, Ecumenical Diakonia presents diaconia not merely as service or charity, but as a transformative and prophetic calling of the Church. Calling that actively engages with issues of injustice, human dignity, and peace building. It calls for churches and ecumenical partners to embody a diaconia that is contextually grounded, publicly engaged, and deeply prophetic, challenging systems of oppression rather than accommodating them. However, in many contexts today, including my own context in Finland, churches and Christians face the temptation to align with political and militaristic powers, economic systems, or nationalistic ideologies, often at the cost of their prophetic voice. Given this tension, how can Ecumenical Diakonia, as envisioned in Call to Transformation, reclaim and embody its prophetic role in societies where churches risk being co-opted by dominant political or economic narratives instead of acting as agents of justice and transformation?
Yes, thank you very much for this broad question. But I think one of the developments we are seeing in the world is that in many parts of the world, the diaconal work of the church was viewed as in coherence with the development agenda of governments. And that's why it was easy for governments to say, for development work, we are going to give money to a church organization. But today, we are seeing discomfort of these relationships that were established for a very long time. And we are starting to see some kind of divergence between faith-based organizations and their governments. And I just say, welcome home. We have been in this situation for a very long time. And so it is very interesting to see faith-based organizations, especially in the global north, starting to have a prophetic confrontation with their governments, where they feel that the priorities of their governments are not going in the right direction. And I can tell you, you can learn from your siblings, brothers and sisters from the global south, because they have been in this struggle for a very long time, and therefore reclaiming prophetic theology from the Kairos document could be a very good starting point, because it clearly defines how the church understands itself in relationship to business, in relationship to the state, and in relationship to any other powers. And for this reason, I think we have gone through cycle where in the history of the church, because after Constantine became Christian, diaconia in terms of hierarchy was lowered, and other ministries were lifted up. But in the previous era, the church was suffering persecution and diaconia was thriving. And that's why we see after Constantine becomes a Christian in the 4th century, other people decide they cannot be part of this mainstream church, because what it has done is that it has lifted up hierarchy but undermined the ministry of the ordinary people. And that's why I think we are at a time when we can reclaim that prophetic identity. And it's easier to do this when we are offering service, because it's very difficult when we are using only words. So I think diaconia provides an opportunity, and that's why I am very hopeful today that diaconia is an opportunity for ecumenical strengthening today than simply meetings on dogmatic debates. So I see a very much opportunity for change. And in context where Christians have been feeling that they have relegated diaconal work to professional units in their church, we can now realize all Christians can be summoned again to participate in ecumenical diaconia in their small context. And we need to reclaim the prophetic nature of that diaconia.
thank you so much for your words, for being here in the flesh, for the service that you do in your professions and your life. I want to begin in where you began, with the slogan, "Doctrine divides and service unites." And I read this document as a response to the need to articulate a doctrine or a dogma around diakonia. Service needs a doctrine, and service has received a doctrine. As happens when we have to organize, professionalize, when there's money and funds involved. And this document, it speaks about the diaconate of all believers. Det allmänna diakonatet, det allmänna diakonatet. Echoing the Lutheran priesthood of all believers that we in the Swedish context are very familiar with, the priesthood of all believers. That through baptism we are all ordained, called to serve, not just the professional priests or the trained deacons or trained professionals. I would like you to say something about this new, maybe kind of spiritual economy in which justice and compassion is sometimes managed by experts. You have already touched upon it. Contra diakonia, service as a free expression of grace, if you would say. That's one question. And the candidates for priesthood and deaconhood that I teach, the priests, they elevate the bread and they ask, how do I know that the person receiving this bread is baptized? Because that's what the doctrine says. She or he she has to be baptized. How do I know? And the deacons in the other room, they raise the sandwich or the food and they say, this is for everybody. So baptism, doctrine, Christian faith, can it also be an obstacle? And in way is baptism an obstacle?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. And actually, that's part of our day-to-day engagement. You know, the ACT Alliance stands for Action by Churches Together. We have 158 members from different confessional, Orthodox, Protestant, even Catholics we have as a member of the ACT Alliance, and also the Anglicans. So, and you note that even within one confession, the doctrine is contested, is not monolithic. Our faith, Lutheran faith or Methodist faith, no. We have different interpretations. Sometimes dictated by doctrine, sometimes dictated by the interpretation of the sacred text based in the political environment that you are involved. So it's very important that it's very difficult, and that is I admire the World Council of Churches that needs to deal with these ecumenical organizations on issues related to theology and the Christian unity. So you can imagine how difficult it is. But the diakonia is the very simple and easy way to overcome these doctrinal differences as well. Because the work of the diakonia, you are not entering our motivation is based on our faith, the principles of our faith. That is solidarity, inclusion, compassion, justice. Everybody, and theologically we can dispute, okay, let's have an interpretation, theological interpretation, what justice means. And one of the cases that is very normal in the ACT Alliance is about our engagement on issues on sexual reproductive health and rights and LGBTQI respect. We don't have this problem with our members that sometimes they are disputing in WCC, legitimately, on the theological side. But in the front, they note that the diaconal work, we are talking about the dignity of the human beings, and you are not discriminating on any basis. So that is a big work that we need to do. And I believe that the frame diaconia under confessional frameworks, it's not a good way to go. Because there is a big challenge, a big risk in terms of siloed and dispute and competition. And we had that in the past. We still have some remaining of this. And it's important that you work that, of course, diaconia is related to Christianity, so ecumenically. We need to do that ecumenically. We need to sit together and see why you have so many different structures, some Lutheran, some Methodist, some Anglican, some Pentecostal, and we are not working as one.
Hey, my name is Lisa, and I am a student from Münster, the University of Münster, which is in Germany. And my question is for Reverend Metata, and it is, what truly makes a prophetic voice prophetic, especially considering that in the Bible, many prophets did not actually wish to be prophets. For them, it was more of a burden than something they desired. For example, Jeremiah, who resisted his calling. So what would you say are characteristics of prophets in our modern world?
Yes, these days in our Bible studies, we are reading prophets a lot, and we are reading Jeremiah at the moment. I have also been exploring right now in the WCC material. We just have a deposit now of new resources that I think will be launched this week on the life and work. And I've been gleaning through this material to see how we started to use the idea of the prophetic. And I think this is an underestimated self-understanding of the church. Very early on, if you read in Acts, Jesus is presented as a prophet. And if you read in the Gospels, John the Baptist understands himself in the prophetic tradition. And I think the idea of the prophetic has not been lifted up very much in the self-understanding of the church. But it is one key dimension of what it means to be people of God. And the prophetic is not identified only for a few people. If you read the prophet Joel, we understand that in the last days I will pour my spirit on all God's people. So the idea of the spirit democratizes how we engage in society in a transformative way. Being prophetic is informed first by taking seriously the lived experiences of the people. Prophets, and by the way, they were true and false prophets. But true prophets took very seriously the lived experiences of the people. When you read Jeremiah, you will come across a situation where he's confronting another prophet called Hananiah, who is giving people false promises. And Jeremiah is saying, you need to tell people the truth about what is going on. And this is an important dimension of the prophetic. It takes seriously facts. And in so doing, that's why the issue of the reading of the signs of times that we hear in the Gospels becomes very important. But third, the prophetic also is very much concerned, and Walter Brueggemann is very helpful author in this regard. The prophetic means that we are also not only critiquing the present, we are not only challenging the present injustices, but we are also proffering a new imagination, possibilities of hope for people. This is what makes prophetic. The prophetic is not short-sighted 5-year political programs. The prophetic is imagination of a future of justice, of life, of peace of life in abundance, not for a few clique, but for everyone.
Exactly.
And that's why this tradition of the prophetic is something that we must reclaim to inform diaconia. Because then our diaconia is not only some kind of a 3-year project cycle. Diaconia becomes an imagination of transformation of lives for a long time. Not only a few people, not only people in Sweden, but people in the whole world. Because the prophetic also is universal. It takes very seriously the concrete lived experiences, but then connect with the lives of all people of God and all creation.
Amen. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jantje. I'm also studying in the University of Münster in Germany to become a vicar. And I have to say you've made it very difficult for me because you immediately answered my question and made it very difficult to narrow down only to one question following what you were saying. So I'll try my best to be brief. I found it very interesting that you were talking about the faith-based and right-based diaconia. And I think that links well with what Petter said about the bilingual language that you have to use as church organizations. And I was wondering if in your very important work talking to the governments, whether you're not maybe in an empower balance, like where the power is not properly balanced between the two, because one is speaking exclusively monolingually, the government is only using rights-based language, whereas the church has to navigate the two. And in that setting, how it's possible for the identity of the diaconia, which is linked to the identity of the church, and also the ecumenical movement that you're both supporting, how that is possible to be negotiated without losing out, without being the weaker partner, without having to sort of take hits in order to reach a common goal, whereas neglecting the faith is difficult, especially, as you said, you're working with so many local faith-based church, little groups of diaconic workers who do their best. So in the global scale or the bigger scale, the governmental scale, you shouldn't let go of those faith principles. And I was wondering how to negotiate that, how to sort of rest assured that the power imbalance is not as severe as it might seem at first glance.
Thank you very much for this question, very relevant actually. You know, and Kenneth mentioned some of the elements of that as well, because you know, when we talk about development, well-being of people, the governments of course play the main role because they have the power, the policies and the things. But we need to realize that the governments, they have their thinking, and that's related to the bilingual language that we need to have. That is very short term. They are planning for 4 years, that their mandates, if they will be re-elected, maybe another 4 years. And then when the other party do not agree with that, they spend about 2 years destroying what the other did and building a new one. So that is the secular logic. For the diaconal work is the long term. Is how the churches see the kingdom of God for everyone. And that is a long process that is full of elements. And how will you convince people about that are very technocrats sometimes? And that is related to a question that I did reply to you about professionalism as well, that is associated with the diaconal work, because sometimes we have within the diaconal work very strong, okay, you are right-based approach and we need to be very professional and we need to have the balance. Of course, we need to be efficient because that is stewardship. As it's mentioned by God. So we need to be very relevant on that. So I think that we need to be bilingual. We have improved in this way. We have many spaces. I mentioned one that I'm in the World Economic Forum, and my main role is to work about moral economy. The people need to understand that this takes time and need to be something that is built and supported and defining who is the actors that when I'm leaving my mandate, someone else is going to take it out. So basically, and we need also to give literacy to the faith-based communities to understand the political processes, because we need to go out of our ecumenical bubble as well, because the world is not only the institutions. is everyone. Those that are out of even the faith or non-believers, they need to be part of the work that we do as Diakonia. So we need to understand the secular language as well, but also to make all these bureaucrats to understand the religious literacy, and that there is a lot of work being done in this sense.
Thank you so much to our students who've asked brilliant questions. And of course to our international guests as well, who answered brilliantly. Dr. Matata and Mr. Bueno de Feira, I'm now going to give you the challenging task to, in 2 or 3 minutes each, summarize. What have you heard from each other, from the students, and if possible, summarize it in a prophetic way. By talking to our realities and giving us hope. So, Dr. Matata, could you please start?
In 3 minutes.
3 minutes maximum.
So I think we are standing here on the shoulders of the giants who saw very far ahead, those who met here 100 years ago. They were looking, they were not only trying to address the immediate crisis of the war, but they wanted to reimagine how the churches together can become a force in the world to transform every aspect of life. And I think in this regard, we are in good company because we are connected to this tradition. And we can do this as church, and we can do this in partnership with others who are not part of the church, our interfaith partners, secular actors, and so forth. But we bring something very unique. We bring this tradition that goes back to the prophets, that goes back to the early church. And we know that it was transformative in the past, and we know that it can be transformative again today. I think we need to move away from the self-pity that we sometimes hear when people think that, oh, we are declining in numbers and so forth. The early church was a minority when it was effective in Ecumenical Diakonia. So it has nothing to do with numbers. It has to do with our vision for society. If our vision for society is to see transformation, to see people gaining their agency, to take care of their own lives and destiny, we are going to become effective, even if we are few. So for me, I see that there is a potential because the church is the unique organization which can operate at a local level, but which also has got tentacles that connect to the whole world. We belong to each other, and for this reason, Ecumenical Diakonia also means that we can take advantage of this local presence and leverage our connection at global level. And we can be a force to reckon with, to transform the world, even with all the negatives that we are seeing today.
Thank you. And a complimentary voice.
Yeah, I will start saying that we need to be very critical of our own work. Because, you know, it's very easy for us to frame, yes, we are part of this visionary way where you want to go as society. But if you see that we have very good statements in our churches, in our different organizations, but we have no application at all of what you are saying. There is a complete dichotomy between action and what you are saying that should be done. What needs to be done is just do it. Let's do faith and action, not faith in the box. We need to go further out and engage. And I think that's important in chapter 10 of the Diakonia call to transformation. It's mentioned some of, and I will read it actually, not the text, but the Ecumenical Diakonia must reaffirm its theological grounding and prophetic vocations. We cannot do diaconia without our firm conviction on our Christian principles. And that is valid for all the organizations, and that's what you want to do more and more in the ACT Alliance. The second one is to build new networks of cooperations across faiths, regions, and movements, recognizing that we are engaging with everyone, not only with the ecumenical movement, not only with the churches. To invest in capacity sharing, public theology, and prophetic advocacy. And that is, as it was mentioning, the Kairos moment that you mentioned at the beginning. Let's take advantage and do it. Yeah, that is the Holy Spirit. Let's do it. But we need to be bold and change our mindset to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And to wrap this very dense and, fulling session up, I want to give the floor to Charlotta Norby again to pray for us, because we need God's guidance, support, and sustenance to be able to do it.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, everyone, for this extremely rich dialogue that we've had this morning. There's so much that stays in my heart after this morning, and I'm sure for everyone here. But before praying, I would just to mention a few things. So we're called both to prophetic and practical duty in diaconia. So it's both, it's not one or the other. And we need to be a prophetic voice and engaged in transforming society in a constructive and long-term way. And diaconia in itself can overcome theological differences and be a way to ecumenical community. And also, religious literacy is crucial to be able to contribute in a meaningful way. And we also need to have the secular language. We need to be bilingual. So thank you, everyone present here today. And warmly thank you especially then to Kenneth and to Rudmar for your very wise words all through the morning. And also, of course, thank you to the students from the University College of Stockholm for asking these pertinent questions. And thank you to everyone here and to everyone listening also in online. Let us close with a prayer. Creator, Savior, and Helper, we have called every human to restore your creation and restore dignity for all life and to restore hope. Equip us to together serve this troubled world. Challenge us to do what is needed to be done in this troubled world. Strengthen us in our weakness, being a part of this troubled world. Bless us with your presence in this troubled world. Send us to our troubled world. Amen. Amen. And let us go in peace and do faith in action. Thank you.